Hi, it's Melissa with My Membership Minute on Monday, March 30th, 2015. Here's what's been happening in our membership community and some insights that I've had about my meditation practice this week. Make sure you stay tuned all the way to the end for some new content announcements. So one thing that really stood out to me this week was the depth of awareness and observations throughout last week's comments on the weekly challenge on discontent. So Ulrika encouraged you to explore discomfort of being with discontent and our society's disapproval of feelings of discontent, of not being able to stand anything. So I'll show you where the weekly challenges are on our membership site. It's past the help section, past the Just Like Me interviews, and it's right here, past the blogs, right in the daily practice section at the very top. And here is the one on discontent. So Ulrika's been doing weekly challenges on being present with your emotions over the last 5 weeks, and including this week. This week's one was on joy. And they've been incredibly profound, so I'd encourage you to check them out. And they've reminded me of being present to our entire emotional landscape. So many of you spoke about discontent, how it was a way of avoiding feeling anything, to escape from feeling, that it's a way of being stuck. A lot of you spoke about how discontent becomes a gateway for exploring the possibility of change in your life. Sort of, why am I discontent? What needs to change for me? And one thing that really stood out to me that was really poignant, that I could really relate to, one of our members said, and this was really profound to me, is that discontent for me is usually paired with fear, perfectionism, and not feeling good enough. And so I could really relate to that. And a few of you also commented on how you could relate to that comment as well. So definitely check out these weekly challenges. There's 5 weeks of them, including this week. To feel joy, to feel discontent, to feel ease, to feel trust. And then how do you feel was the first week of that. So I want to point out that how this relates to me and my practice, because I say that I'll speak about that in these membership minutes as well, is that this past week was really challenging for me emotionally as well. To put it frankly, I was pretty grumpy and irritable, and it was pretty uncomfortable for myself and my loved ones. And I pulled out a card from one of my oracle decks that pretty much sums it up. I was this little grumpy red fairy. So that was me, grumpy red fairy. And the thing that's on this card that I find that really sticks out to me is at the bottom of it says be your true self. So as much as it can be challenging to be uncomfortable, to be with these uncomfortable emotions of irritability, that's the kind of key thing, is to be with these, be your true self. So I wrote about it in our meditation group, which I'll show you here. It's also in the daily practice section. You click on the meditation group. And it was in this past week where Michelle was talking about opening our awareness to wholeness. And I did not feel whole at all. So I really struggled with even whether to write about it. But then there was something in there that Michelle said about, no matter what's coming up for you in your practice, we always love to hear about it. So I wrote about it. And, there was a day in being with these uncomfortable emotions that I'll share with you. All week I was fighting with it, wanting it to be different, not wanting to be grumpy red fairy, because what kind of spiritual teacher am I? What kind of yoga teacher am I if I'm grumpy? A true spiritual teacher wouldn't be grumpy, wouldn't be irritable, wouldn't be treating her husband this way, wouldn't be feeling this way. And really only the shift came in for me when I accepted that I was feeling this way. And I remember at the moment on my cushion, I'll get emotional about it now, because I had this shift. There was this huge shift, and instead of fighting myself and saying, you can't feel this way, you shouldn't be feeling this way, all of a sudden there was a huge amount of compassion for the suffering that I was having. And then everything changed. I truly had compassion for what I was feeling. I had compassion for this grumpy little fairy that I was, and everything changed. So while we may want to be in love and light and unicorns and butterflies and parachutes and lollipops all the time, if we do that, then we're repressing a major part of our psyche, and we're spiritual bypassing. And pushing these so-called negative parts of ourselves into the shadows is to do them a major and massive injustice. Our darkness is just as beautiful and as much a part of ourselves as our light. So I took a lot of this teaching on the darkness out of Lucy Cavendish's writing in my Oracle card book here. Because she writes so beautifully about it. And she says, the gentle softness of the night allows us to see the glow of the moon and the shining bright stars. The dark womb of your mother is where you were created. The dark shadows of the earth is where a seed is planted, and from the dark earth new growth comes. The dark is a restful place to sleep. We need shade to shelter us from the harshness of the midday sun. The darkest time of our lives are the times when the greatest lessons, strength, and renewal comes. And from our challenges, we break through and we learn our true strengths and our individual beauty. So from the challenge of being with all of that irritability came this really incredible compassion. So the dark times may not be easy, but they do allow us to see our lights and our gifts. So if you do want to learn more about this, I would encourage you to watch our shadow lecture on our membership site, because I go into a lot more detail about it there. It's on the lectures section, so I'm going to show you where that is. If you scroll all the way to the bottom of our membership site, there's a lecture section, and there's a shadow lecture for winter solstice. And you can click on that there. And it hasn't been a too much watch section here, and it's from our old membership site, but you just click here and that's the lecture. It's not very long, it's less than 15 minutes. So if you wanted to know more about that. So I'm going to leave you now before I encourage you to leave some comments with some of our new content from this week from our membership community. One is a Just Like Me interview that I did last week with Ivy Tulin. So Ivy takes you through some you get to learn about her life in Warwick, New York, and also some parts of the membership site that you might not know about through her eyes. So you can have a look at that. There's been some comments already, so you have to click on the last page here to take a look at that interview. There we go, Just Like Me interview. And then also I did put new content in the postures and pranayama section in the library there. I added the first breath practice there. So if you scroll down past the daily practices to the postures and pranayama, I added a square breath practice that uses the slow-mo ball. So if you check that out. And also I would encourage you to check out a very lengthy blog post that I did. Well, it was actually in response to an Ask Melissa question this week that has some new guidelines for the connective tissue practices here if you have any health conditions. So you can check that out here. It goes over the guidelines that I put together now for those of you who are living with fibromyalgia or any nervous system disorders, of the order in which to do any of the connective tissue practices, how often you should do them, and a lot of good guidelines here to what some of the founders of the movement have to say about that as well. So I'd encourage you to check that out as well. So in closing, Thich Nhat Hanh describes community like a garden full of different varieties of trees and plants. And when we look at ourselves and the other beautiful trees and flowers, we can grow to understand and love one another. No one plant is greater or lesser than another. If the garden has too much sunlight, you know that all the flowers would wither up and die. And if the garden has too much rain, then they're going to drown. A garden needs shadow and light. Some days you will bring the rain, some days you will bring a cloud, and some days you will bring the sunshine. And then some days you will be the deep nourishment from the soul. All is necessary for the garden to grow. When you share your experiences, insights, and concerns with our fellow yogis, you in return receive acknowledgement, love, and acceptance. And I'm so grateful for each person's contribution, full of difference, full of collective wisdom. So I would love to hear from you. What stood out about, and I'm starting to name these because I'm finding I'm coming back to them. These are blog posts, video blog posts in and of themselves. So I'm calling this Embracing Your Whole Self from this My Membership Minute. How are you able to acknowledge all aspects of yourself, the darkness and the light? Are there any emotions that you find challenging or choose not to embrace on your emotional spectrum? So tell us more. Leave your comments and response, and I look forward to our conversation this week. Namaste.